Hello, I'm Dr. Lisa Belisle, and you are listening to or watching Radio Maine. Today I have with me artist Jodi Edwards. It's great to have you with me today.
It's great to be here.
I've always enjoyed spending time with you, particularly at the art gallery openings, because you're probably the brightest human being in the entire crowd. You make a particular effort to really be one with your work.
I do. It's something that's kind of taken on a life of its own, and I attended a workshop a couple years ago on branding, and they were talking about how to brand your art, and I started thinking, well, I dress like my paintings, and maybe that would be kind of a way for me to be recognized, and people would kind of get it, and so it just kind of took off from there. But now you should see my wardrobe. I mean, it's like I just keep buying, different colored shoes and sweaters, and it's fun. It's become really fun. It's a fun thing to dress like the painting.
You have an entire, as you say, shoe collection that actually is quite astounding to have spent time with you over the years, because there's never a duplication.
Yeah, hopefully you'll get to see the shoes I have on today at some point.
Oh, well, that's an invitation that we'll have to take you up on. This piece that is right behind me, October, obviously people can say, well, of course we've got the black and we've got the orange. What else about this caused you to be thinking October?
Well, one of the things I try to do is paint for the season or the month, and so for me, October is always going to be orange, some black, and this was my idea for October a couple years ago, and it kind of got a little wild, actually.
For people who are listening to the podcast and can't actually see it, how would you describe this piece that you chose to bring with you today?
Oh, geez. Lisa, how would you describe it? Maybe we can do it together.
Well, I see a lot of shapes. I see a lot of vivid colors. But then there's also some sharp lines. There's some chalk stars or chalk-like stars. I mean, I personally really like your work because it's got so many different elements to it.
Right. There's some really vibrant orange, some bright turquoise, Kelly green, black. It's quite a vibrant piece.
Is orange a color that you resonate with?
Honestly, all color I resonate with. I just totally dig it. So
orange and everything else.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, that's fair. And you have very nicely brought your shoe. This is the first time, I have to say, we've ever had a shoe with us on the table on the radio show.
I can put it back on.
Well, I would like to have people be able to take a look at this.
It's kind of fun.
It is a very fun shoe. I think it's the most creative clog I may have ever seen.
I had to have it.
Yeah, so it's got, I don't know, it's got some skulls on there, some hearts, all kinds of different colors. Where did you get this shoe? And the other one that matches it.
I don't really want to say. I don't like supporting Amazon, but sometimes, I will make an exception or maybe I justify some of my purchases for my art. But I do try to. My mother has been boycotting them since they started, but we're not going to get into that today.
Okay, so you're gonna protect your source. We'll just say on this particular shoe.
Well, you got the hint. You got the message.
I got it. I understand. So you're more of a small business supporter, it sounds like.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense because you are yourself a small business, right?
Right. Yeah.
You spent a lot of time working as a teacher. for using English as a second language, which is it still called ESL now?
Yes, it is. Yep. Yeah, I kind of I got into teaching. So I grew up in a family of, my parents were both frustrated artists, and so they raised us 4 kids to really go after the arts, which is actually the opposite of what it usually is. My dad was a frustrated actor. He wanted to go to Yale Drama School and was talked out of it. And then my mother was a frustrated artist. So we were just, the arts in my family was just like, yeah, great. So I kind of, I went into the arts early on in my 20s, started painting in my 20s. And after a while, I felt like I needed to prove myself somehow in mainstream. So I wanted to know if I could, really do it. And being a teacher in a public school, I think there's no other better way of achieving, mainstream success if you're accepted. So that was part of my. Plus, at the same time, I was a singer at the time they made its decision. I was waiting tables, and I was 38 years old, and I was just really tired of the arts life, trying to make it, and needed something a little more concrete. But I think that was a really big part of it, is just wanting to know that I could fit into mainstream society, and I did.
So was there more of a question as to whether you could fit into mainstream society because you came from parents who were frustrated artists and maybe not quite as mainstream?
Right, yeah. I mean, my dad was actually the town justice of the peace for 30 years. But, and you'd think that he would encourage us to go to law school, or but it was no. Who did you wait tables on this week? What famous celebrities did you see? And that was kind of what we were praised for. So that's, I think, where that came from.
And you did cross paths with some interesting people, including Ella Fitzgerald.
Okay. So that story is, I was 30 years old. I was living in New York City. I moved to New York in my 20s. And wow. I met her road manager in an elevator on my lunch hour. I was working on 57th Street in a hospital, actually, in a detox unit. And every day on my lunch hour, I would go over to that big fancy hotel. I think it was Essex Street or something, Essex House. And I'd take the elevator. I'd take my lunch, and I would take the elevator, and I'd just press any button. And one day I got in, and her road manager got in the elevator with me, and I was listening to music from Italy. I'd just gotten back from Italy, and he said, "Oh, I'm Miss Fitzgerald's road manager. We just got back from Italy," and we clicked, and I brought my guitar later and sang for him, and he wasn't hitting on me. He was 70 years old and just needed to be listened to, and he was the recording manager for Billie Holiday, and he had Frank Sinatra back in the day, and had all these great stories. And so I hung out with him for a couple days, like on my lunch hour. They happened to be in town for a few days before the concert at Lincoln Center. It was May, and I was 30 years old, and he was trying to figure out how I could meet her. So he said, "Jodi, I've got an idea," because we were sitting in the library in the lobby, eating lunch, and he said, "You know what? Her dresser is sick tonight. Why don't you come and be dressed, ready to go? You're going to carry her dress on your arm, and you'll ride in the limo, and you can get her dressed. She's not high maintenance. You'll put on her makeup." And meanwhile, all I ever did for makeup was lipstick. My sister used to have to do my makeup for me because Anyway, so I showed up, and in a very, elegant, back then I was a lot thinner and whatever, younger. It was a black strapless dress, and I carried her dress on my arm, and we got in the limo. I was sitting next to Joe Pass, and she had a doctor next to her. And the thing of it, oh my God, she was so nervous. And she really had low self-esteem, and God, it was fascinating. She kept apologizing. Oh, I've got a nasal drip, and we were riding up Broadway, and she was telling me all these places where she used to sing. And anyway, we got to Lincoln Center. We're ushered in. I had to get in this tiny little dressing room about the size of a bathroom, a small bathroom. She's half blind because she's got diabetes. I'm trying to get her in a jumpsuit. She's standing there in her bra and her underwear and her and then she's got this necklace from Paloma Picasso. Oh, Paloma Picasso gave me that. Well, then I go to put the makeup on, and it's like makeup from Woolworths, and just a little, I don't know. It was like, and then I got to stand like 10 feet away from her on stage and look through a window. And at the time, I was pursuing a career in singing, or trying to, and we were in the elevator the next day going upstairs, and she said, someday I'll hear you sing. And that's when I started singing, because what other better affirmation would there be? So it was fascinating, but the most fascinating part was how really sad and depressed she was when she wasn't on stage. And but that, what a night that was. Just incredible. And I got to hang out with her and her band a couple days after that, and so it was kind of cool.
It does say something about what we see and what we want to see and need to see when we look at other people that are in the public eye versus what their lives are actually like.
Yeah, it really did. Because I was aspiring to sing, and and then I don't know, it just it really hit me deep, Maybe it's not all it's cracked up to be, or maybe I don't know. Just, it was a very deep feeling to see that she was so sad and depressed, and she actually looked like a bag lady when she was walking in the lobby, shuffling. I mean, it was, yeah. And then she would spend the whole day in her hotel room waiting to go on stage, and 8:00 at night she would just go, and welcome everybody, hello, and she would just waiting for that moment, and she would just shine, and all these people waiting to tell her she loved her. And then on the ride home, I sounded awful, I had a nasal drip, just low self-esteem. It was just like, really? She's the greatest jazz singer in the world. How could she be so human? But she was, She also had a really sad life. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you learned not only a lot from having met her from that standpoint, but also you managed to be inspired to pursue something that you also loved, even knowing that she had not found complete happiness with that lifestyle.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yep.
Do you still sing now?
My focus is on my art right now. I think it's really hard to do I've been wanting to get back into it. I can sing Summertime, honestly, well, I can sing it pretty damn good, I guess. It's my signature piece, but I'd like to sing locally with a jazz quartet, and I've got my feelers out there. Got some guys that are going to let me sit in, and I did sit in a couple years ago and sing with a band. But it's hard to put all my energy goes here right now into the art. So it's hard to do, you have to put a lot of energy into it.
So we get to watch your singing coming off the walls.
Kind of, yeah. I guess, there a lot of artists and musicians they go together, or they're artists are musicians are artists kind of thing. There's a thing to it.
There was a time in your life that you took a pause from your art, and you went towards the teaching, you went towards the mainstream. How did you feel about not engaging in the painting aspect of things during this time?
So, yeah, I still was painting. What I was going to tell you earlier that I started out as an art model in my 20s. I moved to New York City, and I modeled all over New York City. Parsons School of Visual Arts, all of the Art Students League, you name it. And then I moved out to the Hamptons and modeled for some famous artists, including Norman Bloom and David Sally and Larry Rivers. And what happened to me when I was in their studios is that Norman Bloom was had the biggest effect on me. I was 25 years old, and he had a studio that was the size of, not Walmart, that's too big. Maybe your local hardware store. And he just, I was up against a wall, and he had a coffee can full of paint, and he was on the other side of the studio, and he would just go up to the wall and just splash paint on the wall. And I know I'm taking a long way around to answer this question, but I got very inspired by watching him paint. And he kind of, I wouldn't say that he took me under his wing at all, but I was 25, I was very young, but having been raised in an artistic home, I think it was just like the groundwork had been laid, and he kind of set the fire. It was just like, oh wow, look at what you can do here in this huge studio, and Norman Bloom. I just finished reading Ninth Street Women, which explained the whole beginning of the abstract expression era, and he was first and second generation abstract painter. He was right in there with de Kooning and Pollock, and the women I love, Helen Frankenthaler and Joan Mitchell and Grace Hartigan. And so for me to be at 25 years old in that studio and witnessing and seeing what was possible, and I was very well liked as a model because I was uninhibited. So I was requested a lot. And then I started to paint. And I had my first art opening in New York City at the age of 26 years old. And so at a huge loft with 100 people and a big band, and my paintings were 6 feet by 4 feet. And it was just too much to take in at a young age. And so I needed to take a pause, and I needed to address some addiction issues. I needed to get sober. And so everything kind of went on the shelf at the age of 28, and got into recovery. But I did paint all along the while. I did paint, but not like I am now, not where I'm just really going for it. I had a lot of work to do internally, so, but I was pursuing a career in music, and like I said, I was teaching. I would paint throughout those years, just not with the gusto that I have today and that I've always had, actually. Just now I'm channeling it a lot better.
What is your Maine connection? Tell me about that.
Oh, gosh. Well, so I met my husband 23 years ago in a church in Massachusetts, and a funky church, a Unity church. I'm not a big church person, but and David has a camp up in Surry, in Ellsworth, on Patton Pond, and so we started going up to camp, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. And then years down the road, we were always planning to move to retire up there, and then the farmhouse that has been in his family for 6 generations had a fire in it 5 years ago, and we bought it and for a song, and have been rebuilding it. And what I love about it up there, oh my gosh, well, it's just so quiet and so community oriented. It's just, I've never experienced anything like that in my life, where you know your neighbors, you care about them, you can stop in without calling, That took a while for me to get used to that. I don't know. People make time for you. I live down east in Surry, a small town of 1,500 people. And I don't know. I'm never lonely. There's always something to do. You'd think that there wouldn't be because you're living in such a rural community. But oddly enough, there are potlucks like once a week or sometimes 3 times a week in the summer, or there used to be before COVID. There's a lot of community events. And for me, with somebody with a lot of energy, as you can see in my paintings, Maine really calms me down. Being up there, it calms me down. And I need it. I crave it.
How did the fire impact you?
Oh, it didn't really. It was my second fire-damaged house. I bought my first one at 42 years old. I rebuilt a fire-damaged house by myself, pretty much. I had help, but it was the only thing I could afford in Hamilton, Massachusetts. That's another story I don't need to get into, but it wasn't off-putting at all. In fact, it was just like, oh, I've been there, done this, so it wasn't intimidating. My husband let me GC the whole project because I had built the house, and he helped me build the house, the first house. Yeah, it was a lot of work, but a work of art. My house is so colorful. It's great. It's really beautiful, and I love it.
So not only do you match yourself to your paintings, but you match your house to yourself and your paintings.
Yeah, my whole life is curated. I think that's a great way of putting it. I curate everything to the what I'm wearing, to the scarf on my dog's neck. Everything is just, I get such joy out of it. Making things look a certain way, and it's how I was raised too. Everything was about the looks, the way things looked, and the aesthetics. Aesthetics were like at the top of the in my family.
You also had the opportunity to meet the curator. Speaking of curation, isn't that a good little segue for us?
Lisa.
Yes. The contemporary art curator of the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Right. Okay. So I'm living in New York City, and then I discover that all the really cool people are going out to the Hamptons in the summertime. So I want to go where all the cool people are going too. So I managed to get myself out to the Hamptons. This was 1985, I believe. And there was a little coffee shop in Southampton that I was working at called The Buttery. And Henry Geltzeller was the contemporary curator for the Met. And he was, oh my God, such a character. And he used to come in every morning for breakfast. But he was this, oh my God, flamboyant, big belly, straw hat, bow tie, strutting around Southampton. And I can just picture him strutting around and talking like this. And he had such a way about him. And, I figured out I knew who he was. So I figured out if I got my paintings into the basement, maybe, just maybe, he would come down and look at them. So I did. I brought them all down there. And one day I just said, hey, Henry, would you come down? And I've got some paintings in the basement. Would you come and take a look? So he did. And he looked around and he said, yeah, these are good. And that was all I needed to hear.
See, you're pretty fearless.
Fearless, ballsy is another word. I discussed this before with my husband. Is it okay if I say that word? He said, yes. She said, just don't curse, Jodi.
Well, I think fearless, or whatever word you'd like to use for it, is something that not everybody is able to kind of embrace. It's something that, it seems like you're willing to put yourself in the right place at the right time, kind of ask for what you'd like to see happen. And then if something doesn't work out, it's kind of like the saying about the barn burning down and then you can see the stars. You're like, all right, That's fine. I'm going to move on, keep going.
Yeah, I'm a huge risk taker. When people see my paintings, they often say they feel joy, or they feel, happy sounds kind of, I don't know, but they feel something. They say they're joyous, and I feel like I'm always just seeking out joy in life. And actually, my name means Jodi, means joy. But yeah, I'm a risk taker. When I was, two other great stories I won't go into now, but when I was working at the Museum of Modern Art in my 20s as well. I worked as a cashier, and one of my friends figured out the Beatles were being inducted at the Waldorf Astoria around the corner, and we figured out how to sneak in to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Awards in 1988. And oh my God, I mean, just, that was wild. We cased the joint on our lunch hour, and then we got all dressed up and got down on the subway and went in there. And he's like, Jodi, just go pick a ticket off the table when they're not looking. Well, I did. And I grabbed Brian Wilson's ticket from the Beach Boys, and in we went. And what a night we had. And then after that, it was like, this was the same year the Grammys were being at Rockefeller Center, and we were going to get coat check jobs. And it fell through, and I was like, well, I'm going to go to the Grammys. Well, I snuck into the Grammy Awards, and that New York City was blocked off for there were 3 police barricades. I mean, I'm just telling you this because it's the kind of chutzpah that I have. And I ask every single person, walk me to the door, and they wouldn't. And the police said, if we see you one more time, you're out. And I still didn't give up. Eventually I snuck under this thing, and when the cop wasn't looking, will you walk me to the door? And I walked in with these 4 people, and the next thing I know, I'm standing in there and calling my parents from the payphone, and that's just the kind of, I don't know. I don't give up, but here's the thing. I'm polite. I'm gracious. One of my coworkers, when I was a teacher, she said, you're like a bulldog with manners. You're like a pit bull with manners. So I'm tenacious. I go after it, but I always try to be thankful and grateful and try to be nice in the process. Except for when I was getting into the Grammys, that was just do or die. So that's the kind of, chutzpah, I guess you could say.
Do you find that there are a lot of other artists with that type of tenaciousness and fearlessness? Have you run into really people like yourself?
Well, I kind of got the feeling that Eric Hopkins might be like that when I talked to him at one of the openings. I was asking him for some advice, and I remember him just saying, drive fast, speed. He said, speed, drive fast, and never look back. Something like that. He said, you got to take risks. He said, no, the first thing he said was, you got to get kicked around. You got to get kicked around a lot, which I have a thick skin for somebody who's emotionally sensitive. It doesn't stop me. I usually won't take no for an answer until I go to the person who really has the ultimate authority to say no. But again, I try to be nice about it, But when they told me I was going to have to put a brand new septic system into that house that I bought in Massachusetts for $139,000, when nothing, you couldn't buy anything under $400, and I found a house all boarded up, my very first house. I was in the Boston Globe too, on the North Shore section for building this house or rebuilding it myself. I had help, but I learned a lot from Time Life books and hiring people that taught me framing and wiring and roofing. And no, I did the roof on my own. But, I lost my train of thought. The septic, they said, you're going to need a new septic. And I was like, well, that was like a rumor that was going around. So the septic guys could just put new septics in. And I said, well, I want to know from the septic people that come and tell me whether I need a new septic. I want to know from the guy who gives the certificate whether or not I really need one or not. So sure enough, I called the company, and they said, well, no, you got to have 10 feet of empty space. And the house hadn't been lived in for 3 years. So my cesspool passed when they told me they don't pass cesspools anymore. But that's the kind of thing that I had so many. I'm a great hoop jumper. I can jump over hoops. I have the stamina. I just I just keep going.
It's a great characteristic.
It can be. It can be hard for the husband sometimes.
Like you've been together for 23 years, so somehow you managed to balance it.
We do. We're a great team. He's very grounded and very practical. And yeah, we're a great team.
It's good to have that yin and yang.
Yeah. Yep. And I do think opposites attract. I do. He's an introvert, sort of. I'm an extrovert, extremely, I would say.
Really? That shocks me when you say that.
Really?
But I think that it's always interesting for me to talk to people who are very extroverted and who are willing to live out loud, because I think sometimes people who are willing to live out loud, they give permission to the rest of us to live out loud. I mean, when you bring your shoes, when you bring your art, when you're willing to not have fear, then other people who maybe aren't as extroverted can say, well, that seemed to work out all right.
That's a great point, Lisa. It's a great point. It's because it's not that easy being so ta-da. I mean, it is. It's fun, but occasionally I feel vulnerable sometimes, and that what do people think of me kind of thing. But so hearing you say that, that's helpful. You never know who you're going to inspire. I have heard I'm an inspiration to many people, actually. So that's always a good thing.
I think so.
Yeah.
And clearly, having met many artists myself and gone to many openings, I mean, you've always been memorable in my mind.
Okay.
In a very positive way.
I'll take it.
Yes. And your work is also very memorable. So when you talk about really living fully the person that you are, and you're not hiding behind anything. You're pretty out there.
No, it's always been my dream to really have a career in painting. And, I'm finally doing it. So I'm in my 10th year now. So, they say it takes 10 years just to get, just to get there. So.
And you feel like you're there.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing I heard recently is that when you're in your 60s, are supposed to be the best decade of your life. The prime. Actually, I read an article or heard it somewhere that from age 60 to 70 is when we are in our prime. And I'm all down for that. I'm 61, and I think we have it backwards too about age in our society. The people that I look up to in our gallery, especially Philip Barter, Eric Hopkins, they're in their 70s. There isn't Philip. I think he's 80 actually. And I look up to them. Their careers are really. It takes a long time to get your career to a place like that. So, I'm looking forward to getting older. I don't know, for a woman to say that, it's like avant-garde or something. It's unusual, but I just think we get better with age. We have more wisdom. Yeah.
We kind of grow into our cells and our genetics and our kind of
and
destiny.
we get a lot of the other stuff out of the way in our 40s and 30s and 40s and 50s, and our careers are established. We're financially more stable, and hopefully, and I'm psyched. You just got to keep your health, right? We've just got to stay healthy. That's the priority, Yeah.
Yes. Come tell my patients that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Inspire them.
You've got to. That's what it's all about,
I completely agree. So more good things to come from you.
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
I think so too. Well, I want to thank you for bringing yourself and your shoe and your beautiful painting, October. And also I know your husband, David, is out there with your two little dogs.
Yes.
Out here on Little John Island.
Yes.
So
thanks so much.
Yeah. So shout out to David and the dogs walking around Little John. It's very nice to have all of you as guests.
Oh, good. Well, I'm really grateful to you and Kevin both for the opportunity to do this. It's wonderful.
It's been a lot of fun for me. I've been speaking with artist Jodi Edwards today on Radio Maine. I hope that you take the time to look at the Portland Art Gallery website or go to the Portland Art Gallery in Portland, Maine, or maybe come to one of our openings and you get a chance to see Jodi's shoes up close and personal along with the works that she does. Thank you so much for coming in and talking to me today.
Thank you.